Do you think God wants to break you?
If God wants to break me, he's going to do it.
Because we said, right, the
yeah,
hero's
maybe he
journey,
wants
there
to.
must be death and rebirth. So what, like something, you have to be broken. At some point, you must be broken. You can't fulfill your mission without being broken. And whatever that is, it has to terrify you.
But can't I be semi-broken or semi-close to broken and back from the edge? Death
and rebirth. That's the archetype, right? And what does that require? It means going into the cave and facing your dragon, which is your deepest fear, and feeling like it's going to kill you, and then entering into the void of nothingness, and then coming out the other side, reborn. And in that place where you're reborn, you're going to know things that you did not know sitting right here. And you're going to have a much bigger perspective, right? I mean, you agree with that template, right?
I agree with it, but I feel like I can just, I don't feel like
Get around that?
Not get around it, but I don't ever have to fully die. Like, I can just come close enough times. Like, I'm not going to underplay. No, of course. But I'm not going to underplay how significantly difficult my jail experience was.
Yeah, because you do talk about like how tough you were, you managed it, and I guess I believe that. I'm not, but there had to be moments where you're just like,
it was terrible.
Despair.
No, it was absolutely terrible.
Or fear, or like.
But this is very interesting into your death and rebirth point, because when it felt completely terrible, I do have the emotional control to not feel that. But I decided to let myself feel it because I felt like I wouldn't learn as much if I turned my brain off.
That's right.
So I've talked on PBD about Tristan. Tristan and I have the same superpower. Tristan didn't care about jail. He didn't care. He didn't, or he acted like he didn't care.
His own code.
He acted like he didn't care. But that was his coping mechanism.
Sure.
Don't care about jail. I decided, no, I'm going to care. I'm going to feel everything. I'm going to allow myself to feel these negative emotions because I feel like I will learn more. I could have done what Tristan did. I could have woke up and said, one day or later they'll let me out. Still rich, give a fuck.
Right.
Could have done that. I didn't do that. And jail, that's why he sleeps. That's why I have nightmares. Because I don't believe his jail experience was that traumatic because he turned his brain off to it. And that is a superpower.
Yes.
And I do have that power. If I went to war, I could go to war and watch all my friends be blown to pieces and still fight. Yeah. I would still be capable. I can turn my brain off if I have to, but I decided not to because I felt that feeling things would teach me more, which is why I'm kind of arguing your point about death and rebirth, because I feel like I don't have to fully break. I just have to get close enough to the edge to learn something and come back.
Why not break?
Because if I break, then there's too much. My empire might fall.
You don't know.
Well, exactly.
You don't know.
I don't know.
And that's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
So why would I?
That's why you don't want to break.
Completely.
It's scary.
I don't want to lose what I have.
Yeah.
Mentally,
But
physically, financially.
Yeah, but that attachment, what would God say to that attachment? I don't want to lose what I have?
But okay, I don't want to lose what I have because I also have a responsibility for others. Let me tell you something. If my mind broke and I couldn't come back from that.
What's more important, your family or God?
Does God want me to break? I don't know. You asked the question. And if he does, I will break.
Right.
Right?
Well,
but
you won't have a choice.
I won't have a choice. But jail itself was terrible. Like, we're talking about vulnerability. I can sit and explain all the things I struggle with in jail. It was absolutely terrible. And I think a lot of people who are watching this, I think they need to keep in mind, I wasn't in jail. I was in Romanian jail.
What's the difference?
Well, it's the poorest country in Europe, and it was built during communism, and it's basically designed to torture you.
Cockroaches,
Yeah, I mean, it's not like jail, like we imagine jail. I don't want to insult the Romanian justice system, and I don't want to insult any Romanians. I'm still within the confines of Romania, but I think most people at home understand what I'm talking about. I didn't have yard time. I didn't have any friends. I was in a room for 93 days. I did not leave that room unless I was being dragged to court in a language I didn't understand to be sent back to the room. Yeah, it was hard.
I did a 4-day vision quest, 4 days, 4 nights, no food or water out in the mountains, like in a restricted area, like just like a prison cell. And that took me to my edge. So I can't even imagine 93 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. And you don't know how long you're going to be in there for.
Yeah.
And you have no control over anything. And you don't sleep very well. People think you just sleep it off, but you can't. The jail is very loud. There's a lot of distressed people in there, a lot of upset people. The energy is sad. Yeah, it's a bad place to be. But I knew that my only option was to deal with it. So I knew that not handling it wasn't an option. So if not handling it's not an option, the only option left is handling it. So you just have to find the best way to do it. Yeah. And I certainly allowed myself to feel a lot of emotions in there that I could have probably blocked out so that I could learn as many lessons as possible. And I've learned a lot of things. But I would say that, I mean, all in all, I understood as a man, you need to have a strong body so you're not attacked by anyone else, and a strong mind so you don't attack yourself. And I think jail in many ways is just pressurized life. And if you feel a little bit angry outside of jail, you'll be very angry in jail. It's pressurized life, and you can't distract yourself with anything. Mm-hmm. Most people, if you feel angry right now, you're like, oh, that pissed me off. And then you get on your phone and talk to someone else about something else. You distract yourself, but you're left alone with your thoughts, and you can't distract yourself. And God decided to put me in there to learn some things. And I think it just confirmed a bunch of things I already knew. And I think it was a chance for me to prove to him and to prove to myself I'm not full of shit. And I think that was...
Did you worry that you were full of shit?
Never. But it's good when you get tested. No, but this is actually the truth. Top G, right? It's a name, it's a nickname, blah, 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 Top G. The basic premise behind it and why I'm idolized by all these young men especially is I'm Top G, the number one G, the guy who can do anything. He's the guy. I never for a second when I was saying it didn't mean it. I never for a second when I was saying it thought I was full of shit. Mm-hmm. So God was like, okay, let's find out if he's full of shit. Right. And I was placed there and I said, all right, this is a chance for me to prove to myself and prove to God and prove to the man watching to the prison guards and prove to everyone else, my ancestors, that I'm not full of shit. I had a sense of duty in there and I feel like I performed it exceptionally. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if they kept me in there for 3 months or 3 years or 30 years. I have to perform. That's who I am. And I will default to rationalizing, as you said, whatever it takes. I will come up with any rationale and I will say it in any way which is interesting and engaging and convincing enough to the outside world and to myself to install it in my brain that allows me to compete. That's just what I'm going to do because I don't want to lose anything ever. Yeah. And life, perhaps if we want to extrapolate this out, perhaps God's trying to break all of us. Maybe life is a big competition of who breaks last. I would actually argue, and I said this before, that the number one indicator of a man's success is his ability to deal with stress. I don't think it's IQ. I don't think it's physical capability. I don't think it's anything. If you take a man who can deal with a bunch of stress, he's going to be more successful than a man who can deal with less stress. How much stress you can put up with has a direct correlation to the kind of life you're going to live. Most people who want my life don't have my life because they couldn't handle my life. Yeah. That's why. They go, I want to be like Tate. I want fast cars and private jets and all these girls and all these kids and all blah, blah, blah. But they couldn't handle it. They couldn't deal with the pressure of it, which is why they'll never get there. Because even if they get anywhere near it, they'll have a mental breakdown. Right. So how big your life is and how successful you are in the physical realm is directly linked to how much stress you can deal with. And perhaps God's trying to break all of us. He's trying to find all of our limits. I think most people at home watching this probably have something going on in their mind right now or something going on in their lives that might break them. Yeah. To me, it would be nothing. To them, it's a big deal. Yeah. So God's out here to break all of us, and I want to be the guy who breaks last.
Well, maybe he's trying to make us stronger, give us tests to help us evolve, to help us grow, to help us know him more.
Absolutely. So let's assume that's what God is doing. Mm-hmm. To a degree, he's trying to see where all of us would break. You have two responses to that. You can either be intimidated by the fact that God is out there trying to make your life difficult, or you can be excited by the idea of it and saying, this is my chance to prove myself to God. Right. Which is what I was saying earlier on in the very beginning of our podcast, why I've adopted the mindset where struggle is semi-exciting to me. Yeah. God is out here trying to ask me questions or put me through scenarios where I get to prove myself to him, and perhaps that's why all the bad things happen. Maybe that's why that girl left you. Maybe that's why he made you love her so much so that she could break your heart and fuck your best friend on purpose so that to see how close you could come to breaking. Maybe that's what it's all about. Well, maybe that's the fun of it.
The mantra that I use is, yes, thank you. Whatever comes, yes, thank you. And yes is an acceptance to God, and thank you is gratitude for what's happening. And that mindset is a kind of surrender to God's will. Yeah. Do you struggle between, your will is very strong. Yeah. And I can feel the place where you like to impose your will in the world. Yeah. So your will versus God's will.
Well, he'll win.
Are you in a fight with God on some level, like not literally, but unconsciously, between his will and your will?
No, I think I am doing his will. I think I am doing his will, which is what it takes to be truly successful in the world. I do believe that the moral arc of the universe does bend towards truth And that's not my saying. I think that's Martin Luther King's. But I think that it bends towards truth and justice in the end. I think that the battles we are currently fighting in society, which look hopeless, in the end can be won. And I feel like I am doing his will by standing up and telling the truth. I think I'd have to be a complete coward of a man to end up having all of the masculine youth of a planet paying attention to every word I say, and then say, oh, but if I tell them good things, if I help them and help the world by extension, I might get in trouble. That'd make me a bitch, and that's not who I am. So I think if you give any man worth his salt that degree of power and influence and responsibility, he's gonna stand up and say, okay, this is how you should live as a man, and this is how you can make the world a better place. Unless he's afraid of the repercussions by the evil people, by the people who are on the other side who are genuinely evil and satanic, who are out to destroy good and truth. And I'm not a coward. I've never seen myself as a coward. And in fact, we don't talk about vulnerability. The number one thing I could never exist as is a coward. I think that's, you want to talk about my biggest fear, it would be knowing I'm a coward. Seeing myself as a coward and being very realistic and knowing I was actually a coward. I couldn't accept that because I feel like I would be disappointing all of my ancestors and God, and I would have been full of shit all the time I was talking. Now I'm a fake, now I'm a liar, and I'm none of those things. When I say to the camera and I sit here and talk about depression not being real, I mean what I say because I've lived enough shit to tell you that if depression was real, I would have been depressed. And people know that, which is why they listen to me in the first place. I would hate to look in the mirror and know I acted like a coward on that scenario. I can't be that person. So
Courage is the highest virtue, I think.
you think so?
Courage, love.
Well, I like to think of myself as a man with plenty of love in his life and a very loving man. I also like to think of myself as an extremely brave person. I've never been a coward. And even just the idea of being a coward is enough to motivate me to do nearly anything.